Hello and welcome to Designer Market Update. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2025. I'm listening to some brain music and finishing up responding to some comments. Thank you so much for chiming in with regard to Soluna. Several of you made a couple comments about that. Daniel, in particular, a friend of this broadcast, said that he actually owns shares of Soluna, and he's interested in Soluna primarily because of their HPC rental business and not so much because of their proprietary Bitcoin mining business. So, Daniel, thank you. I really appreciate your perspective on this. And because Daniel chimed in like that, I'm going to leave SLNH in our dashboard. I'm also going to do a little bit of a deep dive just to better understand what's going on. And, I do plan to actually attempt to have conversations with representatives from different companies. I'm just working out some of the technical issues associated with that. And also, I think trying to get a little bit more of an audience, right? Because it's kind of hard to entice someone to come on a broadcast, right? When you've got about, under 1,000 subscribers. So it'd be great if we got above 1,000 subscribers. And then I think I might have a little bit more currency with which to potentially, invite some folks on and have some really good conversations about, business and operations. So I'm just finishing up a reply right here to an issue that I think is going to be very, very important to Bitfarms. I'm going to get to it in just a moment. But as it relates to Bitcoin price action, let's just get right into it. $105,000 a coin, give or take a little bit. We're starting to see, once again, Bitcoin kind of moving off the $100,000 base, right? As I've said, I'll say it again, we got to really start moving Bitcoin higher. We got to see an improvement in hash prices. Once that happens, I do believe Bitfarms will do particularly well. Now, I am still in the process of clarifying and, fixing up some of these, things that I have on the screen in terms of like the, numbers and whatnot. I promise things are actually getting slowly but surely to where I want them to be, but they're not quite there yet. I do want to then turn our attention to Bitfarms and the short interest that Bitfarms has in it. And this is thanks to somebody's comment. They were like, hey, what's up with like the 15%, Bitfarms short interest? So I did a little bit of digging. And so here's the deal. As of December 31st, 2024, so that's about 24 days ago or so, there were just over 59 million shares of Bitfarms that had been sold short. And that represented a nearly 11.5% increase, right, as compared to the previous reporting period, earlier in 2024. So the percentage of the float as of year-end 2024, right, was 15.58%. So about 15% of Bitfarm shares were basically shorted at the end of 2024. Now, I took a quick look and let's just double check. So year to date, Bitfarms is up just over 9%. So from the very end of 2024, right, we're closed till, today, right now, it's about 4:09 p.m. So markets are closed and prices should be settling down, right? We're up over 9%. So what that suggests to me is that any entity that might have taken on a short position in Bitfarms somewhere close to the end of 2024 would likely be a little bit upside down. And clearly, as of 2025, that short trade has not really been working out. We see a bit of a trend reversal in the sense that Bitfarms has, as meagerly as it is, right, they have kind of been going up in price, certainly not as high of a price as any of us would love to see, but nevertheless, from the perspective of a short seller who is short Bitfarms, 2025, the trade has been working against them. Now, at what point do we see a lot of short covering? Well, from my perspective, a really strong catalytic event is when Ben or someone else on the management team comes out and says, you know what? We've got a news release that basically says, hey, we are now where we expected we would be at the end of 2024 in terms of our deployment of hash rate and insofar as our, operational guidance that, right, had previously, look, we were supposed to be at 21 exahash, right, give or take a little bit by year in 2024. We're not there yet. I think once we get there and we're sort of back in sync with where the milestones should be, I do think there's a very, very high likelihood that the stock gets re-rated back up over $2 a share. And at that point, then I do believe Bitfarms starts trading much more in sympathy with Bitcoin and much more, I think, in an anticipatory manner with what may come down the road in terms of an announcement regarding HPC, AI, and hey, is it possible that Bitfarms can kind of borrow a little bit from the Core Scientific playbook, perhaps even borrow a bit from the Soluna playbook, right? To the extent Soluna is doing HPC rental, hey, we've got assets, energy assets of some kind. Again, I got to dig into Soluna a little bit better, so I don't want to really speak too far, out of my knowledge base, right? But the point is, look, Core Scientific, I think we all know, has done incredibly well. Less so as a pure play Bitcoin miner, although they're still very active with Bitcoin mining, but certainly with their HPC, right, AI infrastructure play. That they've done really, really well. And as I commented to somebody in the comment section, hey, congratulations, if you happen to have been a Core Scientific shareholder and you held on through the bankruptcy, you took the risk. Am I going to get anything out of this, right? Am I going to come out with zero or a piece of this new entity? Well, you ended up with a piece of the new entity and the stock price has done really, really well. So congratulations. So that's kind of where I'm at with regard to this issue of the short interest that exists in Bitfarms. I see it at this point as probably not a trade that's going to prove to be successful going forward. Okay. Now, if a significant breakdown in milestone, accomplishment begins to unfold, right, where suddenly Bitfarms is falling further and further behind and there's other issues and there's delays and, then, hey, the stock I think is potentially at risk. But at this juncture, based on everything we heard, right, in the Needham Growth Conference where Ben, right, and, the CFO, right, appeared there and they spoke, I think, very persuasively about the direction in which they're taking the company, I'm inclined to believe that Bitfarms has turned the corner. But the proof, as they say, is always in the performance, right? You got to eventually see it to believe it. Now, the issue of, Canada and, hey, is there going to be a trade war potentially with the United States? How does this affect Bitfarms? Would Bitfarms redomiciling in the United States be useful? Does that take on added urgency to the extent there's going to be, right, a trade dispute? Again, the details are very few and far in between. It's not like we have, necessarily speaking, a concrete lay of the land as to what, President Trump and his administration, like, is he going to really pull the trigger on, tariffs, and what specifically is going to be targeted and what are the ripple effects of that? Like, we don't really know any of this. Adding to some of the uncertainty is the fact that Canada itself, if you happen to be in Canada, right, hey, there's a national election that is likely to occur certainly by at the absolute latest October of this year, I believe, right? But more likely than not, perhaps in the spring, right? We have a Liberal Party leadership race that is slowly but surely unfolding. We have an NDP that I think arguably is probably not going to be in a position to grow its presence in the House of Commons. And we have a Conservative Party under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, which, just from the outside looking in, it just looks like they've got a tremendous amount of momentum. Now, I think from a Bitfarms-centric perspective, I don't know that things get worse under a conservative government. In fact, I think one could maybe make the argument things perhaps get better, right? From a business perspective. Certainly, I think, from, hey, the people I interact with, I think that there's, even amongst a lot of people who I know who are very, I think, at home in the Liberal Party of Canada, it feels as if the Liberal Party of Canada, which I think for my American friends, it's kind of, I think traditionally, right, you think of it as like the moderate party of Canada. It really has kind of like moved away from some of its roots, perhaps in the past, 3-4 years or so, right? And so I generally speaking, sense that there will probably be a change in government, and that the new government, absent something astonishing happening, will probably be led, for better or for worse, by Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. And I would predict that they may very well have a majority in the House of Commons. That would not surprise me. So again, how does that affect Bitfarms? I don't see it as a bad thing. I really don't. I just don't. Now, what I do perhaps potentially see as being a little bit more tricky is when you get into like provincial politics, and specifically in Quebec, right? But I don't want to really get into that on this broadcast, at least not right now. Because Bitfarms, after all, does have a sizable amount of its operations in Quebec. And so as the Quebec government goes, and as the relationship that exists between some of these hydroelectric facilities and some of their customers, right? Depending on how those relationships unfold and how things evolve, that could have a material impact on Bitfarms. But again, that's not going to be the focus at this juncture. I think right now the big thing is these tariffs. February 1st is evidently the deadline that President Trump has given Canada to either become the 51st state, right? Or to otherwise be subjected to these tariffs. None of that quite makes sense to me. As I've said before, I'll say it again. I think a Canada that is a true North, strong and free, is probably better for Canada, and it's probably better for the United States to focus on these United States without getting entangled with, a bunch of Canadian provinces, right? And trying to figure things out from that perspective. Okay, my friend, listen. I may very well do a field trip this weekend. And if I do, I will be broadcasting maybe live on location from the destination of my field trip, but it's not quite set in stone yet. So, I'll just kind of leave you with that. But regardless, listen, I really hope you have a delightful weekend. I hope you have the opportunity to spend some time with friends, maybe with some family. And to the extent you find yourself with not a whole lot of people in your life to hang out with, this ended. Hey, there's always the opportunity to read a book, to do something interesting, to try to improve yourself one day at a time, right? That's all any of us can ever do, is just take a step-by-step approach to trying to make life a little bit better for ourselves each and every day. Okay, I really appreciate all of your support, and I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate your liking these broadcasts and subscribing if you haven't done so already. So let's have a great weekend, and we'll see each other again on Monday.